If you want to see more detailed images, videos, and the full article, check the link in the description. The unfolding situation in the Middle East following a U.S. airstrike on Iranian nuclear facilities has sent shockwaves across the globe, sparking intense debate and widespread condemnation from various political factions. President Donald Trump announced the pre-dawn strikes, targeting key nuclear sites including the Fordow facility. The operation, reportedly conducted in coordination with Israeli leadership and utilizing U.S. stealth B-2 bombers, immediately escalated tensions in an already volatile region. The Australian government's response has been one of cautious concern, calling for de-escalation, dialogue, and diplomacy while acknowledging the volatile security situation. A statement attributed to an unnamed spokesperson emphasized the need for a peaceful resolution. This measured approach contrasts sharply with the strong support voiced by the coalition, who declared their solidarity with the United States. However, the Greens have launched a scathing critique, asserting that the U.S. bombing constitutes a blatant breach of international law and a fundamental threat to world peace. Greens leader Larissa Waters issued a strongly worded statement urging Australia to distance itself from the conflict, warning against being drawn into another brutal U.S. war in the Middle East. Senator David Shoebridge, the Greens' Defense and Foreign Affairs spokesperson, echoed these concerns, declaring the world to be at a crossroads and demanding the Albanese government choose a path of peace, not war. Their calls extend to a complete withdrawal from AUKUS and the adoption of an independent foreign policy centered on peace. Further, they demand the cessation of using Australian military bases, like Pine Gap, in any conflict, highlighting concerns that these bases may have played a role in facilitating the strikes. The initial reaction from the Australian public is mixed. Pro-Palestinian protests have taken place in Sydney and Melbourne, illustrating the strong feelings held by segments of the population. Meanwhile, within Australia, a separate but equally significant story is unfolding concerning the NSW building regulator. A $145.1 million cash injection over the next 4 years will bolster compliance efforts through the digitization of penalty infringement notices, more targeted inspections, and increased prosecutions. This funding will also support task forces working in conjunction with Fair Trading, ASIC, ASQA, and the NSW State Coroner to ensure cross-jurisdictional prosecution capabilities. Building Minister Anilak Chanthavong highlighted the government's commitment to improving building quality to address the state's housing crisis. Commissioner James Sherrard emphasized the regulator's ongoing inspections and the funding's role in maintaining building quality and advancing key legislative reforms. Adding another layer of complexity to the domestic political landscape is an internal document revealing disagreements within the Albanese government regarding the approval of a controversial Northern Territory gas pipeline. The document, obtained through Freedom of Information laws, reveals concerns from representatives of Agriculture Minister Julie Collins and Indigenous Affairs Minister Mallarndirri McCarthy about the project's environmental impact on threatened species and First Nations communities. The brief highlights a call to declare the project a controlled action, necessitating a thorough environmental assessment. However, the department, acting on behalf of then Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek, concluded that a national environmental impact statement was unnecessary. The Shadow Defense Minister, Andrew Hastie, has been vocal in his pronouncements on the Iran conflict, giving multiple statements including one on ABC Insiders and a joint statement with coalition leader Susan Ley. He characterized the U.S. attack as necessary, citing the Iranian regime's failure to respond to President Trump's offer of negotiations. While expressing regret for the loss of life, Hastie maintained the coalition's solidarity with the U.S. and hoped for a peaceful resolution, acknowledging the inherent unpredictability of war and potential wider consequences. A press conference featuring Hastie was interrupted by a heckler who challenged the coalition's position and the legality of the U.S. actions. Beyond the political realm, the human cost of the strikes is profoundly felt amongst the Australian-Iranian community. Kamiz Razmura, Vice President of the Australian-Iranian Society of Victoria, expressed deep distress over the escalating conflict and growing concerns for friends and family in Iran. Razmura noted the heightened fear and trauma amongst Iranian people, intensifying pressure on an already vulnerable Iranian government. The potential for further oppression under a weakened regime following the strikes is a major concern. The prospect of a potential peace deal, far from offering solace, raises apprehension that such a deal could empower the Iranian government to further repress its own citizens. The uncertainty about the Iranian government's response, whether through retaliation against the U.S. or a pursuit of peace, fuels this deep-seated anxiety. Another Iranian-Australian advocate, Rana Dadpour, co-founder of AUS Iran, described the anxieties of her contacts in Iran, who fear both a government crackdown and the potential for further violence. Concerns surrounding nuclear leaks and radiation from the damaged sites are prominent, as is the fear of increased government oppression, including accelerated executions and arrests on espionage charges. Dadpour expressed a deep pessimism about the potential outcomes, regardless of whether the Iranian government retaliates or negotiates. The Australian-Iranian community finds themselves in a precarious position, facing uncertainty and the possibility of increased suffering for their loved ones in Iran. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott added his voice to the conversation, praising Israel's role in targeting the Iranian nuclear program and commending the U.S. support for its ally. The Zionist Federation of Australia also issued a statement welcoming the strikes as a necessary and courageous response, emphasizing the threat Iran poses to global security. The legal ramifications of the U.S. actions have been sharply criticized by Alan Bem, a special advisor at the Australia Institute think tank and former advisor to Foreign Minister Penny Wong. He characterized the bombings as a flagrant breach of the international rules-based order, highlighting the lack of justification for the use of armed force. Bem's perspective underscores the deep division over the legality and morality of the U.S. airstrikes. David Shoebridge further criticized the Albanese government, accusing it of a moral failure for not taking sufficient steps to distance itself from the U.S. actions. He highlighted the government's inaction regarding AUKUS, the presence of U.S. military bases on Australian soil, and the ongoing arms trade with Israel. He voiced concerns about the potential involvement of Pine Gap in the attack, underscoring the vulnerability of Australian sovereignty if the government is not fully informed about the use of joint military facilities. Shoebridge strongly urged a clear statement that Australian bases will not be used in the ongoing conflict. The evolving situation in Iran continues to unfold, leaving the international community anxiously awaiting the next developments and grappling with the profound implications of the U.S. airstrikes. The situation highlights the delicate balance of power in the Middle East and the ongoing debate over the effectiveness and legality of military intervention in addressing geopolitical tensions. The various perspectives expressed by Australian political leaders and community groups reflect the diverse opinions and concerns within the country, underscoring the complexity of the issue and the far-reaching ramifications of the U.S. decision. The coming days and weeks are expected to bring further updates as the situation continues to develop.